Hello friends, myself Dr. Nidhi Darbari on My Education Treasure. In my previous video, I had discussed about lecturing a teaching device, its meaning and shortcomings. In my present video, I am going to discuss about lecturing a teaching device, its nature and suggested improvements. It is an old teaching method. In this method, a teacher delivers a lecture on different points of any topic in a serial order and asks several questions from the students in the middle of his lecture in order to draw their attention properly. He comes to the class with full preparation for lecture and lays much stress on the logical and sequential presentation of the content during lecture. Nature of lecture method. The lecture method owes its popularity to its seeming simplicity and flexibility. It enables a teacher to teach even large classes and cover larger content during a given period in comparison to other methods. Through the lecture method, a teacher is able to provide an overview of the course unit or topic along with the background knowledge essential for understanding it. Besides, he can provide a large number of facts and clarified terms, concepts, principles, theories, etc., thereby promoting their comprehension and their use in problem solving. A teacher following the lecture method prepares a lesson on a topic and delivers a talk in the class. The speed of delivery and illustration used to clarify various terms and concepts are determined by the teacher depending upon his assessment of the learning capabilities of average students. The teacher presents subject matter without any interruption. They seek clarification from the teacher generally at the end of the lecture. The role of the student in lecture method is to listen to the teacher, take notes and list difficulties. From a brief account given above, it is evident that the lecture method is characterized by following features. It is a teacher-centered method of teaching. The teacher plays more active role in the process of instruction. It makes use of one-way communication. In this method, the student plays a relatively passive role, that of the listeners. Suggested improvements. To bring improvement in the use of the lecture method, the following suggestions can be useful. Success in lecturing depends on its appropriate planning. It is therefore essential that the lecture be planned properly. Before planning the lesson, the teacher should try to collect as much information as possible about the entering level behavior of the students. Entering level behavior refers to the amount of knowledge and skills, experiences, attitudes, aptitude, competence in language, etc. that the student possesses. This background information helps the teacher in framing appropriate instructional objectives, selection of content, teaching aids, and proper structuring of the lecture. Effectiveness of a lecture increases if it is properly structured. Structure of lecture relates to the arrangement of the key concepts or points to be dealt with. Brown compares a set of key points with the keys in music. Just as by changing the order of keys in music, one can provide variations upon the theme, changing order of key points results in a different structure of a lecture. Brown classifies a lecture into 5 main types. The classical lecture. A classical lecture is divided into broad sections. Each section is further divided into subsections, which in turn are divided into smaller segments. Each subsection contains a key point to be explained and illustrated. The whole structure of the lecture may be diagrammatically represented in a hierarchical form. The problem-centered lecture. This lecture is structured around problems. In this lecture, the teacher first makes the problem clear and identifies the issues and related components of the problem. For arriving at the solution, each issue is thoroughly examined by the teacher. Alternative solutions to the problems are also critically examined in the light of available facts and evidence. At the end, the teacher summarizes the information into a coherent structure. The sequential lecture. This kind of lecture consists of arranging the subject matter in a sequential form, leading usually to a conclusion. This type of lecture is used in teaching almost all subjects. The teacher may sequence the subject matter in a logical or psychological order. While sequencing the subject matter in a logical order, the teacher takes into account the inherent structure of the subject. But in a psychological order, the main consideration is how best the students can understand the subject matter. The comparative lecture. The comparative lecture is based on comparison of similarities and dissimilarities of different ideas, views, characteristics, etc. on some criteria. Such a lecture can be applied to different subjects such as economics, history, or literature. Before using this variety of lecture, the teacher should make explicit the criteria to be used for comparison and contrast. The thesis lecture. This lecture begins by presenting a proposition such as privatization of Indian economy, which will help solve major economic problems. This is followed by presentation of wide range of evidences and arguments that support or reject the assertion. Towards the end, the evidence and arguments are summarized and the conclusions are drawn. It may be mentioned here that the above classification is not a rigid one. It has been described with a view to enhancing the understanding of the structure of lectures. Depending upon the needs, the teacher may use one or more than one category for structuring the lecture. Effectiveness of the lecture depends to a great extent on the capability of the teacher to secure and sustain the attention and interest of the students. As stated earlier, the teacher should acquire competence in the skill of stimulus variations, which consist of movements, gestures, modulation of voice, focusing, pausing, and audio-visual switching. Several devices are available for making the students interested in the lecture. Telling the students at the beginning of the lecture why the lesson is important, pointing out some key concepts that they need to attend to for comprehending the lecture, relating the instructional material to the personal or societal concepts are some examples of these devices. Effectiveness of a lecture also depends upon the competence to communicate the intent to the student. The process of communication relates to the designing of message by taking into account the entry-level behavior of students, delivery of the message through an appropriate medium, reception of the message without any distortion, and feedback about whether or not the students have comprehended what is taught. The teacher should attend to all these aspects of an effective lecture. While delivering the lecture, the teacher should pay special attention to three parts: introduction, the message, and closure. During introduction, the teacher should make clear what he expects of the students at the end of the lecture. Alternatively, the teacher may announce the main idea or major concept which he or she wants the students to learn. While dealing with the subject properly, the teacher should explain the concepts, provide enrichment materials, support the intention with arguments. At the end of the talk, the teacher should summarize the main points of the lesson. The students will be able to retain the main points for a longer period if the teacher highlights them adequately in the lecture. Proper reception of the message depends upon the physical conditions of the classroom and psychological conditions of the students. The physical conditions comprise seating arrangement, acoustics of the classroom, temperature, condition of the blackboard, etc. The psychological conditions relate to the motivational level of the students during the lecture. For proper reception of the message, the teacher should provide comfortable physical and supportive psychological environment to the students. For maintaining a student's attention, the teacher should not only be enthusiastic about the lecture but also keep the students entertained. For doing so, the teacher should, among other things, make use of humor provided it has educational value and is not out of place. Humor relieves monotony of listening. Apart from this, the teacher should maintain rapport with the students by maintaining occasional eye contact with all the students in the classroom. As already pointed out, the role of the students in a lecture is to listen, observe, and take notes. The effectiveness of lecture can be increased if the students are trained in the use of these skills. Unfortunately, this aspect has remained neglected in our schools so far, and therefore it needs to be attended to. If you found the video to be informative and interesting, I request you all to please give a like to my video to motivate me, share it with others, and subscribe it so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get a notification. In the lecture method, teacher cannot obtain feedback directly from the students. However, the teacher can get feedback indirectly by observing the behavior of the students during the lecture. Loss of attention, yawning, sleepiness, mischief, etc. among students indicate that they have lost track of the lesson. Teacher can take corrective measures by identifying the causes. Another method of obtaining feedback is through students' answer to the question. Teacher should keep sufficient time at the end of the lesson to ask questions. The nature of the questions asked by the students and their answer to the questions reflects how far the lecture has been effective. Application. All the school subjects, including mathematics, can be taught through this method. Lecture method should not be used in an isolated manner. It should rather be used as a supplement to other methods. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe.